that promise that they gave. Your Ladyship and my Lords, the fifth respondent is now affectionately called opaque. Affectionately. I say that because arising out of what transpired at the National Tallying Center, the four issued a statement in which they said they cannot own the results that were going to be announced by the chairman, and therefore they were opaque. Your Ladyship and my Lords, is not coming from the ordinary. It's a term that was given by the Court of Appeal when they were making a decision in another matter, which is now famous here, called the Maina Kiai matter, which when they were looking at the role of the chairman vis-a-vis the other commissioners. And the court did indicate that to suggest that one individual alone can tally and verify the votes for presidential election is to suggest otherwise, to introduce opaqueness and arbitrariness to the electoral process. Those were the words of that court. Members of the court, we might ask if the chairman, as indicated from the affidavits that we have had, that it was his responsibility alone to tally and verify the results, then the question is, what were the other commissioners supposed to be doing on that election day? Were they supposed to sit at home and watch the screens just like any other Kenyans? But then again, the chairman went ahead and allocated them duties. With respect to the fifth respondent was given the role of media. In that role, the fifth respondent was supposed to explain even to the media why what they were reading, the results they were reading, are not being projected on the screens. The results that they read were not projected from Friday 13th. And when that question was put to the chairman to refresh, the chairman said, no, I'm tallying from the back end. Your Ladyship and my Lords, the sum total of this whole transaction is that the chairman usurped the powers of the commission. And it's our submission that after all is said and done, and after we get the reports of the verification, I believe that this court will arrive at a conclusion that the chairman of the Electoral Commission was actually an agent of a presidential candidate. That presidential candidate we will know by 5th of September. And if that's going to be the case, lastly, it's our submission that this court must go further and look at the theory of agency. All the conspirators that did any illegalities, all irregularities, are agents of one another. The person who benefited from those irregularities and illegalities is a co-conspirator with the persons who perpetrated it, and they are agents of one another. And for that reason, we would urge that this court makes appropriate decision with that particular issue in mind. I call upon my learned colleague, Dr. Marua, to take over from me. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Chief Justice and the honorable members of the court, my name is Jotham Arua. I appear for the seventh respondent, Commissioner Justice Nyang'aya. I will be making submissions on the following issues. Issue number 2, whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Form 34As. I'll also speak to the issue whether there were irregularities and whether the irregularities affected the results. I'll mention briefly something to do with the reliefs that this court ought to make, and also issue number 6, whether IBC carried out the verification exercise. So on the first issue, my lady and the honorable members of the court, the position of my client is that there were indeed interference with the uploading and transmission of Form 34As. My client maintains that this was done without the involvement of the commissioners, specifically the 4 commissioners. And it is their position, my lady and the honorable members, that it was done in clear violation of Article 81E of the Constitution and Article 86. Before I proceed, I wish to clarify that we have made reference to a number of authorities in our written submissions, but I will not refer to them because of time constraints. As regards interference with the ICT infrastructure, the Commissioner, in his affidavit, which has been filed before this court, and specifically in paragraphs 33 to 34, raises a number of issues. First, he maintains, my lady and the honorable members, that the server was accessed by unauthorized persons, and these included foreigners and some members of the IEBC. He mentions them by name. He further maintains that one foreigner by the name Gudino Omar accessed the server several times. He explains that a number of forms were pulled down and others uploaded. And he also maintains that there was revision of Form 34Bs. My lady and the honorable members, these allegations are contained in his affidavit, and I wish to point out that they have been responded to by IEBC. In their response, the first thing I wish to point out is that there is no denial that the logs that he annexed to his affidavit emanated from IEBC. The only contention being raised is how did he get them? That contention, in our humble submission, has no merit, considering as he puts in his affidavit, that he was the commissioner in charge of ICT at the commission. If a commissioner who is in charge of ICT cannot access that kind of information, it is my submission that nobody else in IEBC can access them. The next thing that, and that admission, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, is found in the affidavit of Hilda Kavonga. That affidavit is filed by the firm of Iseme Kamau and Maema Advocates and is sworn on 27th of August 2022. And the admission is contained in paragraph 13, Roman 4. Beyond that, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, there is also an admission, and this, according to me, is a serious admission. There is an admission that the server was accessed by a foreigner by the name Gudino Omar, as mentioned in the affidavit of Justice Nyang'aya. But I wish to read to the court what is said as concerns this foreigner. At page 5, paragraph 13.7 of her affidavit, that is Hilda Kavonga, she says, Gudino Omar is the technical lead for Smartmatic, who provides support on the technology provided by Smartmatic. He's the technical deployment lead, and then in paragraph 8, she continues, they said Gudino Omar, being a technical deployment lead, his role is to deploy infrastructure, that is networks, server platforms, and services. In his capacity, he is supposed to have access to the said infrastructure to monitor by ensuring the system is properly running at all times. Now, the first point that we need to bear in mind, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, is, did IBC formally gazette Gudino Omar as one of the persons who had access to the server? Secondly, IBC is enjoined under Article 81E to uphold the secrecy of the vote. How secret can the vote be if it is being constantly accessed by a foreigner from a distant location? What is the guarantee that this foreigner will not grant further access to other unauthorized persons to commit all manner of mischiefs? But more important, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, is the complaint by Justice Nyang'aya that Gudino Omar was uploading and downloading forms. There is silence with regards to that issue. Then there was the contention that other unauthorized IEBC staff also had access to the server. And their names were provided, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members. In the replying affidavit by Hilda Kavonga, again they make this admission, and with respect to one Abdidahir Maalim, it is argued, and I'm referring the court to paragraph 13, Roman 6 of Hilda's affidavit. She says, Abdidahir Malim was a returning officer, and his access was limited to transmitting Form 34Bs and not to any other function. Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, the list of all the returning officers
during
the list of all returning officers who participated are included in the affidavit of Juliana Cherera and specifically marked as Annex J C2. Unfortunately, the name of Abdidahir Mohammed does not appear. It is not indicated with respect to which constituency or which county he was the returning officer. It would appear clearly that there was a lie. Beyond that, the logs that were filed by Justice Nyang'aya were also analyzed by a forensic analyst, George Njoroge. And he submitted an affidavit to which he annexed a report. And in that report, Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, it is clarified that Abdidahir Mohammed accessed the server more than 1,000 times. The question one would ask is, why would he access the server so many times? What was he doing? Madam Chief Justice and the honorable members, it is quite clear that the server was defiled. The next issue I would wish to speak to, and I can see I'm having serious time issues, is whether the IBC verified the results. And it is my submissions that that did not happen. And I'm saying so for two reasons. First, and this is important because it's not been captured by my colleagues, according to the Constitution, it is not only verification by IEBC that is required. Verification is supposed to happen at two levels. First by IEBC, but secondly by Kenyans. That's why both Article 86 and Article 81E institutionalize transparency. IEBC should make sure that every processes that they are undertaking are laid bare for the public to see, so that the public can also follow the processes and undertake their own verification. For reasons that have already been explained, it is clear that this verification by the public was not possible due to the opacity that has been referred to by my learned colleague, Apollo Mboya. But then there is the issue of verification by IEBC, which also did not happen and could not happen given the circumstances of this matter. Madam Chief Justice and honorable members, you have been told how 4 IEBC commissioners were sidelined in the entire process. It is our submissions. It could not